At this point, we're going to talk about a little bit more about the central focus, which is something you're doing very early in your lesson planning. Once you look at your curriculum and once you decide on what you want to teach in a lesson, and once you align what you want to teach in your lesson with the standard you're using for that part of your instruction, the standard will help you create the central focus. The central focus is essentially the key to planning a successful lesson or set of lessons. This is the actual explanation of the central focus from the EdTPA folks. This comes from a publication called Making Good Choices, which is a support publication for when you are writing your EdTPA. The central focus is an understanding that you want your students to develop in the learning segment. Each lesson is called a learning segment when you're thinking about the central focus. So the central focus is the description of the important identifiable theme, the essential question, or the topic within the curriculum that is the purpose of the instruction of this particular learning segment. The standards, learning objectives, learning tasks, and assessments addressed or included in your learning segment should all be related to the central focus. The central focus should also take into account prior assessment of your students and knowledge of your students' varied development, background, interests, lived experiences, and learning levels that might further influence students' thinking and learning. So if you think back to the previous two modules where we talked a lot about understanding student profiles and understanding who our students are, that's a critical feature in terms of helping us develop a central focus in terms of thinking about what students are interested in, what motivates them, what we can use to engage them. So the central focus, if we break it down a little bit more, is really the long-term goal that unites our learning targets. It's basically the unit in which our lessons will be contained. And the central focus is a description of what that series of lessons is meant to accomplish. What is it that when we're done, we want our students to know, or we expect everyone to know? The central focus conveys those core concepts that you want students to develop. You know, whether it's the 5 causes of the Civil War, or the ability to decode words, or the ability to apply a summarization strategy in terms of reading comprehension, the ability to understand the components of cell division in science. The central focus really helps define those concepts the students should walk away from the lesson with. The central focus really goes beyond simply listing skills that the students should acquire, though. It has to align with the content standards, which in our case is the New Jersey Student Standards, and the learning objectives. So it's not just students will learn to read words A, B, C, and D, or students will learn cause 1 and 2 of the Revolutionary War. It really has to align with the standards and our learning objectives. And it has to identify why learning this information is important. What is the enduring learning students will take away from this particular lesson, or this set of lessons? So it's what you are teaching your students, the purpose of teaching this content, how the standards or learning objectives apply to whatever learning strategies you use and skills that you are teaching during the lesson, and especially in content area, what are the content area connections? And then how does a particular lesson 1, really connect with the other lesson plans in the unit, lessons 2 and 3, let's say, to help students understand and connect the skills they're developing from lesson to lesson. We want to make the learning as meaningful as possible. So it's what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why this is a good idea. This is an example of a central focus for an older group of students in math. The purpose of the lesson is to build upon the student's previous knowledge of plotting points and graphing. Students will learn the slope-intercept equation and display how to use it successfully in graphing problems. This lesson will also serve as a building block for future solving of algebraic expressions and graphing, as well as real-life uses. Graphing is used today in a variety of magazines and websites that students will need to know how to interpret and understand. So here's what we're doing. We're working on plotting points. We're taking our knowledge about plotting points and graphing it. We're going to use it to understand the slope, the concept of slope, and the algorithm for slope. And then we're going to use that to solve some graphing problems. And this is important because, first of all, it serves as a building block in further mathematical reasoning. And second of all, it actually has real-life applications in terms of we see graphing used in magazines, in websites, in publications we might run into daily. And we want to know how to read and interpret those graphs, those tables. Let's go to a second example of a central focus. This one is a little simpler. This is for younger students. This is really at about a first grade level. The central focus of this unit is word work and word recognition, decoding phonetically predictable words with short vowel sounds containing consonant blends in the initial and final position. CCVC, those are examples of how words are constructed. Consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant, for example, clap. Consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, for example, mask. Consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant. Consonant, for example, blast. To facilitate accuracy and fluency in reading. So the goal we're teaching is a specific word decoding skill with specific kinds of patterns in it. And the reason this is important is this facilitates accuracy and ultimately fluency for students when reading, and those are critical features of comprehension. So those are two examples of a kind of central focus. So give this a try yourselves, and you're actually going to be doing this when you, at the end of your observation log this week, when you look at what might be a central focus of a lesson that's going on in your placement classroom. And then you're also going to try to match those to some SMART objectives. But think about a unit in a subject you're likely to teach. Okay, many of you are elementary ed majors. Think of a subject you enjoy teaching, and think of some concept you'd be teaching in that over the course of a couple of lessons. And think about what would the central focus be. You're going to connect that unit to the standard, a state standard in that subject area. If you're not familiar with the state standards, you go right to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards on the New Jersey Department of Education website. So you're going to just enter in New Jersey Department of Education into your URL. You'll get a drop-down menu that will take you to the Student Learning Standards, and you can look at those standards in any content area at the elementary level and at the secondary level. At the elementary level, you'll cover a variety of content areas. Predominantly, the standards there are in English and mathematics now. If you're at the secondary level, you can go to the science standards, which are basically next-gen science standards. or you can go to the standards for secondary history or secondary English language arts, secondary art. So you have a variety of options to look at. Imagine that you have 3 lessons in which you're going to teach the concepts of this particular unit. And then create a central focus that you would use in your lesson plan, which covers those 3 lessons you plan to teach. What's the big idea of those lessons? What's the essential question and the essential learning you want students to walk away from these lessons with? So use this as an exercise to help you think about how you create the central focus. And then you're also going to try to write about that in terms of what you observe as a central focus in a lesson that might be going on in your placement classroom. From here, we're going to move on to SMART objectives.